Good afternoon. This is the Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for May 5th, 2 p.m. session. The following cases will be discussed: 2019-306BZ, 49 West 23rd Street, Manhattan, and 2019-265BZ, 60371A, 35 Giffords Lane, Staten Island. This is only a review session, so please do not call in. So the first item is 2019-306BZ, 49 West 23rd Street, Manhattan. This is a Rumble Fitness legalization.
Correct. It opened in October of 2019. We have proof of service of initial application to officials. We have notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community board waives its recommendation. We have DOI, fire department letter of no objection, a certificate of no effect from Landmarks Commission. So that all of that is good. And I understand that ADA accessibility is provided by equivalent toilet changing facilities at the first floor. And my only question about that is there's also a private training room and lockers in the cellar, which is not accessible to ADA. So how does that work if that person needs private training? And then I just want to note to our council that there are drawings A5 to A7. There's sound attenuation drawings that A5 to A7 that need to be combined into the main set of plans. So I'll go to Commissioner Shanda.
I had no comments.
Okay. Hartley Brown. Not on meeting. There you go.
No comments.
Okay. Sheta.
Thank you. The PCE opened back in 2019, October 2019, and they are talking about some DOB violations, 3 open DOB violations. Some of them is related to the elevator, and they said that one or more of the violations related to the sprinkler installation. I'm not sure if the facility right now has an operable sprinkler system. So I would alert fire department, especially I haven't seen feedback from fire department. So
There is
John
a
sent the
letter.
letter.
Yeah, there's a letter of no objection from the fire department.
oh, we got a little, so okay. So
Yeah.
if this is based on an inspection, they looked at the sprinkler, so it should be okay then.
Okay.
If not, I just wanted to like raise the red flag for this. One of the violations is related to the sprinkler, one or more. The other thing is, like the chair mentioned, incorporate the sound attenuation plan into the entire set and key in the measures to the plan, because I haven't seen the sound attenuation keyed in to the on the plan view of the PCE. The drawings are like very neat. I have to say, I like them. But I did look at the boxes that on drawing A-004. There are boxes that are pointing to spaces. My understanding is the top is the name of the space. Let's say the lobby is space number 100. 100 square foot. Is this the area? 4 OCC. I was like trying to guess what is that. But usually when people prepare something like this, they provide a legend. So I was anticipating in the legend portion, like a small explanation section for what that does that mean. Apart from that, it's
Sorry, what are you talking about? The little boxes that say like 002 303 square feet?
Isn't that occupancy load?
Yeah, no, it says it's room number 2, it's 313 square feet, and then they talk about the number of occupants in the space for fire department
Where
purposes.
is this explained in the legend?
Oh, it's not explained. It's just, I have to admit, this is like such a standard thing for architects that I just look at it and I'm like, oh, but
Oh,
okay,
okay.
it's not
For
explained.
architects.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, it's just so standard.
Okay. No,
uh,
I wasn't, I used actually, I've been told that when you prepare something in this country, even if you're preparing a technical report, prepare it to an attorney to read it and understand it. If you're preparing a drawing, make it crystal clear that nobody could be confused about it. And
mhm.
I wasn't clear about the contents of that notation thing that,
Right.
yes, the name I figured it out, the area is an area, but what this area is, I wasn't sure. So I would put an explanation in instead of this big shaded rectangle saying accessible route. I would make that just smaller and put that one of these squares and explain what is 120, what is 220, what is 60, and
Okay.
that makes
Okay.
it clear.
So I would say that if there's some critical comments from other commissioners, then they could correct the drawings, but if there aren't, then we don't need to make,
I'm okay with that.
right? Okay.
If fixing this is gonna delay like the moving this case forward, I don't want to delay it, but next time submit it. It's much better than providing it this way.
I would say that this is more also to the project managers who are
Yes.
here, they're all watching and listening. That when you see a set of plans, you should have a legend on the drawings that explain what all of the potentially mysterious things are, like a box with numbers in it, you don't know what it is, or there's a shape and you don't know what the shape means, that kind of thing. You should ask for a legend.
Yep. And finally, I have a question. If there's any complaints from adjacent offices.
Okay. And just now I have the fire department letter in front of me. It says, these premises are protected by fire suppression system, standpipe and sprinkler, and a fire alarm system that has been inspected and tested satisfactory to the department's rules and regulations.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay. Okay, and Commissioner Shabeta, if I can get the button. There we go.
There's nothing for me to add to this.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, next item is 2019-265BZ 60371A 35 Giffords Lane, Staten Island. This is a variance with an amendment to a GCL. Please note this is a review session. Do not call in.
Right.
Thank you, Kurt.
Okay. We have proof of service of initial application to officials, and we have notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. I note that for this application, notice was mailed to neighbors on April 15th and included the Zoom dial-in numbers for the May 4th and May 5th hearings, which is what we're doing now. So this is where the notice was very specific about these teleconference. The community board recommends denial, and I quote, fervently. So that's a pretty extreme recommendation for denial. They indicate that they never received a copy of the traffic study, though requested, that they are opposed to bulk waivers and inadequate number of parking spaces and to traffic egress onto Sampson Avenue. And I'll read their other comments. They're also wanting to bring attention to a green roof or photovoltaic panels are now required pursuant to DOB Buildings Bulletin. These are all things the applicant should be responding to. Giffords Lane and Arterial Street should be relied upon for main access to the facility. It appears that additional parking could be provided on site if the proposed building were moved to Giffords Lane frontage, and a driveway providing direct access to an accessory parking area were situated at the rear. Fire department access would work better if the building were sited proximate to Giffords Lane. I'm just, as a parenthetical, this is an enlargement of an existing building. It's not a proposal to tear down the building and build new. Proposed site storm drainage was not addressed in the application. The design must include retained on-site retention or connected to existing city system pursuant to DEP and DOB approval. A builder's pavement plan should be filed and approved by DOB prior to the filing of the proposed building for approval. No curb returns at entrances. All entrances should be standard drop curbs and aprons. And we would like to see specified locations of proposed signage and refuse area. And the second floor mezzanine is not ADA compliant. Those are all community board comments that I just wanted to read into the record, but I do think the applicant should respond to them. We do have 2 letters of objection from neighbors or from members of the community concerned about traffic and congestion. The BSA resolutions that were provided include one for a tax lot on Giffords Lane that is not this one, so it should be removed from the set. It's 181-83-A for lot 33. The prior GCL 35 waiver and variants that applied to this site were to allow a plumbing supply company on lot 20 and accessory parking for it. I think it's reasonable to ask DOT again now whether they are interested in reconnecting Schley, Lamoka Avenue to Gifford and Baltimore, because that's what building in the bed of the map street does is it blocks off the connection, and at the moment it's just a parking lot, so it could be reconnected. So I think we should reach out again to DOT to make sure they don't have in mind that connection. Because this is kind of filed as if it's almost as if it's an amendment, but it's actually a new variance. The statement, and it's a new GCL application. The statement of fact states that the congregation currently utilizes a space at 2474 Forest Avenue for services. This is a 20-minute drive from the subject site. The 70 Winthrop Place site they also use for other functions is a 17-minute drive. So I'll try to understand what's the catchment area for this congregation, since that seems pretty far away in the realm of things. And the length of the drive has to do with, Google Earth telling me how far it takes to drive, how long it takes to drive there. The project must comply with South Richmond District and lower density growth management regulations. And they need to describe the waivers sought under these regulations, because that really isn't clear. And I'm having trouble figuring out how much of an increase in the degree of noncompliance is proposed. That's also not clear. I do see the outline of the existing building on the drawing versus the expansion, but I don't know at what point it increases the degree of noncompliance, because it just shows noncompliance, but it doesn't say what the increase in it is. I also didn't find parking calculations anywhere, which is maybe one of the reasons the community board is upset, because they don't understand how the parking numbers are arrived at, amount of parking is arrived at. The drawings need to cite to the zoning resolution section in the zoning analysis section on drawing both in the as of right and the proposed. There's a drawing C1. So you need to cite, the architect needs to cite to the sections in the zoning resolution. That's also a general request to project managers. Make sure that whenever you've got zoning calculations on the drawings, it cites to the section in the zoning resolution. Otherwise, it just says, 20 spaces complies. Well, what's the section? What's the calculation? All of that. Section 107-461, which is the South Richmond District Special Regulations, says that front yard minimums are 18 feet, not 15 feet, even for corner lots, since section 24-34 doesn't treat corner lots differently in an R2. Also, absent the GCL 35 waiver, this is a corner lot. So, and even with the waiver, it's a corner lot because it's facing two map streets. So the as of right should show the setback from the map street of Lamoka and the waiver required for it. I think actually most of the zoning analysis is wrong. This points out that the minimum variance necessary may be addressed instead of through the variance, through the allowable GCL 35 waivers under section 72-01G. Because most of this building is not being built in the actual bed of the map street. It goes a little bit forward of it, but not in, it's not like another application we have where it's sitting entirely in the map street. In this case, it's just projecting a little bit. So we have the ability under 7201G to just waive that little imposition on the map street. And that may cover most of the issue, if not all of it. And I also don't believe that what they're talking about is a rear yard. I actually have a lot of comments on this, is a rear yard since it fronts on map Lamoka. So 100 feet of the frontage on Lamoka is a corner lot and the remaining 48 feet is an interior lot. And the side yard requirements are, I believe, 10 feet along each side lot line under 107-464, under 107-464. So if that's correct, and the architect needs to verify this, then a 20-foot rear yard would be required at the interior lot portion fronting Lamoka, which sits partially within the C11 overlay. And there is no side yard requirement in a C11. There is also a permitted obstruction in a C11 for one-story structures up to 23 feet. Here though, and here that existing mezzanine is clear of the rear yard, so you don't have a two-story structure there. The applicant needs to verify this, but that might reduce or even eliminate all of the waivers under the variance, in which case that would just need a GCL 35. There isn't any explanation in the statement of facts for why the expansion cannot retain the front yard setback along Sampson. And expand instead to the Lamoka map street portion, because I really don't see why there needs to be a further imposition on the Sampson front yard, which is really a very residential neighborhood, and the front yard should be retained, I think, and I don't see why you can't reconfigure the sanctuary space to move out in the direction of the parking lot, basically. And then I ask, what is the finish on the east and south elevations that are described as existing block wall to remain? What's the condition of that wall? Because it shouldn't just be left as an unattractive block wall because it's a residential neighborhood. And now this is a house of worship as opposed to a commercial building. The community is concerned about the parking issues, but it appears that parking is being provided consistent with the zoning resolution based on the size of the largest worship space, which is how you're supposed to measure this. And the shuttle bus, I think, is a great added convenience that's being suggested, but we don't have parking calculations, so I can't really verify. You know, I can guess that it sounds like they're right, but I'm not 100% sure. Also, neighbors complain about the use of Sampson for access to the parking. I'd like to know whether this lot, whether the lot can work without it and just enter from the Gifford side, except in emergencies. Or not at all. It looks like that would work. And then the frontage along Sampson could be better landscape. So then that is actually eliminating access to Sampson, enlarging the building towards the parking lot, and then eliminating that egress from that side. I see Tracy's hand is up, so I'll recognize her in a second. Also, I'd like to understand, there isn't any landscaping shown adjacent to the residential building that fronts Giffords and Sampson. That should be provided. There's a lot 25 that fronts on Gifford between the subject building and Gifford. Whose is that? Who's parking there? It's being used as a parking lot. We need DOT, we need fire department, DEP.
We have
had-
fire department.
Oh, we did? Okay, we have fire department.
Are you going
Okay,
to read it when you're finished?
yeah, just a second. So DEP has comments, which I assume they got. I don't necessarily need to read them, and I'm going, and yeah, so you want to read fire department?
So the body of John's thing says the fire department has the following questions for this application. 1, show front entrance shown to the proposed structure on plan. 2, will the proposed structure be provided with a fire suppression system and show location of fire department connection? And what is the street status of Lamoka and Sampson?
Turn up the-
Sorry,
Yes.
sorry. I don't know why that happened because I thought I had it off. Yeah,
Okay, street status of Sampson and what?
Lamoka.
Lamoka, okay. Anything else?
That's it. Once, it says, once the fire department receives a response to our questions, we will continue to review and comment.
Okay, okay, and then I'm gonna recognize Tracy Benke. Hold on, yeah, there you go.
Hi, there was a parking analysis provided as part of the EAS. Although it wasn't required in terms of the secret threshold. That's why it wasn't sent to DOT because there's a small increment. However, the consultant did include an off-street parking analysis that starts on page 43 of the PDF that was submitted on February 5th.
Mhm.
So that's where I found the parking.
Right, yes, and they actually talked about the availability of parking in the off-site parking lots, which is why
Right.
they're suggesting a shuttle bus that drives to various parking lots. The community had objections to the idea of relying on a parking lot they don't control, but my feeling is they're providing what's required by zoning. If zoning underestimates required parking for houses of worship, that's a whole subject to bring up with city planning. But I'm gonna go around you have anything else, Tracy, that you want to?
No, that's it.
Okay, so I'm gonna go around the room with the commissioners. I see Commissioner Shetta's hand up, and I'm gonna start with Commissioner Shanda.
So I do have lots of zoning related questions. So instead of kind of repeating them, I would say the applicant needs to go through each and every zoning resolution section applicable and go and explain that in the statement of findings and facts, how each one of the waivers are related to each one of the zoning resolution section. And likewise in the drawings also indicate each one of the requirements and tie them to the zoning resolution section, because I also had difficulty trying to figure out where is the front yard, which front yard is being applied. Is it the lower density growth management, SSRD? Where is the rear yard? And because this is an interior, there's a portion of it is a corner lot and portion of it is an interior lot. There are different sets of rules and regulations that are applying. So the applicant needs to show it in the drawing. What portion of the site is it being considered as a corner lot? What portion of the site is being considered as an interior lot? And then the applicable zoning regulations accordingly. There was also that confusion in terms of how the corner of that Lamoka was being used for a very small portion as in front yard and also as a side yard based on. So I think there is a lot of overlap of zoning regulations. Once they lay those out very clearly, it would make it easier for all of us to understand the zoning resolution sections waivers that are being requested and the extent of it.
Agreed, agreed.
So I won't get into those details. With regards to the as of right, indicate the affected zoning law section I talked about it, clarify the statement of fact. Okay, in the statement of fact, they need to clarify that the required front yard for the as of right, the required front yards according to the street frontages. And this goes again, both for the as of right and the proposed. So I guess I'm repeating myself, but they need to tie in all the elements together. The dimension of the building in the proposed, the dimension of the building height, fronting on Sampson Avenue in the plan section AA and the south elevation, it differs. It's by about a foot or so, but they, and I think it's because they're showing a different set of baseline, and the baseline is varying, which I'm not sure why, because it should be,
Baseline or base height?
sorry, the base height. So the base height is varying, and I'm not sure why it is varying. So that needs to be clarified. And in some places it says the front wall height varies in plane. What I've noticed from the documents and from the plans, the front wall height varies in the plan anywhere from 21 foot 4 inches and 25 foot. So the elevations and sections also do not match in terms of the wall height. The proposed side yards do not match with the statement of facts and the zoning analysis. The plans, as you indicated, the parking analysis has not been clarified, so it's not very clear to me. I had a similar question based on the site visit. I felt that the access from Sampson, I'm not sure why it is necessary. Gifford is the main thoroughfare. If most of the activity is going to be after business hours and on weekends, I'm not sure it is necessary to bring in traffic through Sampson or Lemoka on after, on weekends or so. They should be adequate to be, I think Gifford access should be adequate for that purpose. Also, the bus stop is right in front of the site. So it will, they have indicated, the applicant has stated in its statement that some of the congregants do take the bus. So that is good to know. So the bus stop is right there. And the Staten Island Railroad Station is within 5 minutes walking distance, at least based on my walking speed. And the parking lot is also right there. So the providing, given all the various parking spaces that are there around the area, I do not think there should be a parking issue. It's very well served by mass transit. It has various parking spaces, municipal parking lots around the area that are within 5 minutes walking distance. And also there is the bus that is being provided to shuttle people back and forth from this parking lot. So I do not think parking would be an issue that will affect the neighborhood. However, I do agree with the community's concern that the access from the Sampson be limited. Maybe it can only be an emergency access at most. And I agree with you that the elevation treatment of the building along Sampson needs much improvement.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, Commissioner Otley Brown, as soon as, okay.
So I have questions about the comparison between the as of right space in the sanctuary versus the number of seats versus the proposed. So first they need to address the fact that the DOB occupancy is much higher because it's listed at 1 seat per 7 square feet. And they're using a much higher number per square foot for a seat. So that results in many less seats than you could possibly have in capacity. And the other issue is that between the as of right and the proposed, they're using a different amount of square footage per seat. So for instance, in the as of right, they're using 11.5 square feet per seat, which results in 132 seats. But in the proposed, they're using 9.81 square feet per seat, resulting in 240 seats. They need to be using the same denominator to make the comparison. So if the proposed is at 9.81 square foot per seat, then so should the as of right. And if you did the as of right that way, you would actually have 155 seats instead of 132 seats. Let me see. I have them in various places because they don't really get to the programmatic needs until they talk about the minimal variance. I had all these questions in the uniqueness finding for programmatic needs that are sort of answered afterwards. Let's see.
What did you say? It's 9.8 square feet? Is that what you say?
In the proposed, it works out to 9.81 square feet per seat to get 240 seats. But in the as of right, it's 11.5 square feet per seat to get 132 seats. So it makes it look like the as of right can accommodate less people than it actually could accommodate. So if you use the 9.81, you could actually accommodate 155 seats. And of course, if you use the DOB occupancy of 7 square feet per seat, you could have 216 seats. But I do know that they often differ from the DOB occupancy numbers, but they should still address that issue here. Then, okay. So while it seems like even with the difference in numbers, because the rooms for the youth Bible study as well as the congregation and the as of right is not suitable to address the entire congregation, adding in the growth, I still think that the proposed is an overshoot and they could probably accommodate what the amount of people they need, which is 230, 240 people, using just a GCL waiver and building the building out into Lamoka Avenue a little further. And then they would still have the right amount of buffer from the surrounding residential, and it would solve the issue with people going through Lamoka and exiting onto Sampson, because it would prevent that from happening. And they should address that. They talk about the shuttle operating on Sundays from 9:30 to 12:30, but they don't really address how often. I was searching through and I couldn't find it. So the question is how often, and does it make it a reliable option for people who are choosing to park further away or for people who are choosing to come by train? And let's see. Also, that another option would be to perhaps have one of the yards be wavered so that you could make the Bible study rooms for youth larger and accommodate that population. Because I think they say there's 50 to 60 children. So, but the rooms are much shorter. So if you were to relieve one of the yard regulations, you could get the longer rooms, the more rectangular rooms that you get in the proposed. So those are my questions, mostly around the minimal variance.
Sorry, just one second. Thank you. And Commissioner Sheta.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, there is a parking extract that's available in the folder. I believe it's a part of the environmental submissions, and I did go through that, and I believe it has some clues on the calculations for the parking demand and available parking. And I'll get to that in a second. But my comments are, I have comments regarding the programmatic needs. I believe the programmatic needs described in the statement of facts are very superficial. They do not justify the need for many rooms that are in the proposed, such as multiple education rooms, the multi-use rooms, so they need to mention something about that. They are talking about educational programming. They need to add some more detail about the educational programming they're having. Actually, I knew about the educational programming from, I believe, the review for the community board. And I believe the community board has done like very thorough review for this project. So this is one thing. I agree with Commissioner Brown that the proposed seems to be an overshoot. I believe with some reconfiguration for the spaces of especially the sanctuary, that the proposed could approach to be something very close to the as of right, and I'm hoping that we could avoid actually encroaching into the bit of Lamoka, talking about the building, of course, not the entire project. But for regarding the proposed condition plans, I don't think that 30 spaces would handle 240 people. The proposed 30 spaces parking that they reached in their conclusion that they would be sufficient to handle the 240 people. Of course, they are considering off-site parking at the railroad parking and the parking across the street on Schley, as well as the on-street parking. The conclusion was if we provide 30 spaces, that would be sufficient. I'm not sure if this is accurate. Like I said, the ground floor of the proposed contains large lobby. I'm sure about the need for that big, large lobby.
Sorry, could you repeat that? For me anyway, you broke up when you talked about the lobby. Can you just
I
repeat that?
believe that the size of the lobby is too big. If the lobby is reconfigured, if it's smaller, and with some play with the reconfiguring the sanctuary, we could avoid the encroachment of the proposed building into the Lamoka bed.
Mhm.
Is that clear?
Yeah,
Okay. The ground floor contains 2 children programming rooms, 1 nursery, and a children programming / multi-use room that need to be incorporated in the programmatic needs. There is a mezzanine that has 3 offices and 1 meeting room. I'm not sure why 3 offices are needed. Probably 1 or 2 of the offices could be utilized as children, and then save the day downstairs on the ground floor and use that to either customize the spaces and reconfigure the sanctuary, so reduce the size of the building and reduce the size of the waiver as well. Regarding the parking, they counted the parking in the adjacent railroad parking, and they counted this over the weekend, and they excluded the spaces that were assigned for permanent parking. I understand that, but I'm not sure what time exactly they performed the count through, and the idea of if let's say the total parking spaces for that parking facility is 60, and that's exactly what they did. They said the total is 62. We have about 20 spaces assigned for permanent parking. So the rest is about 40. We're gonna book the entire 40 and consider them in assessing the availability of the parking when looking at the parking demand. I don't think it should work that way. Who said that nobody's gonna be parking inside this facility other than the church congregants? I believe it should be a portion of the 40-something available parking spaces that should be accounted for. In addition, in their analysis, the way they did this parking analysis is they did 2 things. Number 1, they did a survey, a questionnaire actually. Apparently they sent forms to congregants and they got answers for 104, I believe.
yeah.
And based on that, they determined that 97% of the congregants will go with vehicles, private vehicles,
Mhm.
and they will need parking. And in addition to that, they went to the temporary facility that they are using right now, and they counted parking cars inside a movie theater, I believe, across the street. They didn't mention that they counted parking anywhere else other than the movie theater. So if, let's say, this is assuming that every single congregant who's going to the church, the temporary location, is parking within that parking lot for the movie theater. But this is not actually, it could be not true, because if I go there and I park on the street, I'm not included. If I go there and I park somewhere else, I'm not included. So I'm not sure. I felt like there are some sort of like tweak for the numbers to match the approach coming from the questionnaire to the approach that's coming from counting actual parking during a service over the weekend at the temporary location. So we need to get some refinement on these two approaches. And I believe if they consider portion of the parking spaces at the railroad parking, like half a mile away, and if they add some extra cushion for the people who are using the temporary location, as well as the parking lot of the club, it's a club something across the street on Schley. They accounted for about 36 space on that parking lot. I don't believe that parking lot has 30 spaces on it. I believe maximum is even within 10 spaces. I did look at the Google images. I did look at even the plans they submitted. I'm not sure if the parking across the street, right across the street on Schley, from the proposed church location has 36 spaces. I don't think it has that. So that entire parking calculation need to be re-looked at, because I took a tour in the area, and I believe this is number one, it's a very limited size street system. It's not 2-lane, 2-way. It's one way, one lane each way. So if there is a parking issue, this street system is gonna be clogged, and we don't want to do that to the community. Regarding the existing as of right and proposed plans, they need to provide the dimensions on the existing condition section AA and BB. I wasn't able to like follow and see how tall is the building right now. Provide dimensions on floor heights and clear floor headrooms on all sections. We want to know the clear headroom for each section they are putting on their drawings. The reason I'm talking about this is I'm thinking that they could put some piece of mezzanine into the sanctuary and use that as extra occupation. So they could increase the capacity actually for the sanctuary by means of two things. Number one, reducing the lobby. Number two, if they take the portion of the existing building, they take the finished floor of the ground floor down by 2 feet, because right now it's about 5 feet above the parking lot outside. So you don't need you don't need to go up 5 feet from the grade elevation to inside the building. If let's say if we make it not 5, let's make it 2.5 or 3. If they just lower down the existing building by 2.5 feet and partially, and they use that headroom to build a portion of mezzanine within the sanctuary, that would help increase the capacity while maintaining a reasonable size for the sanctuary, much less than what is configured right now. So I believe that could be looked at.
You're saying make the sanctuary a double height? I mean, in other words, have 2 levels in the sanctuary?
Partially. Part of that sanctuary, let's say in the back, they could, I believe they could play with the orientation of the sanctuary. Instead of having the platform this way, they could have it the other way. And then they could, with the higher headroom, they could come at the back and add piece of a mezzanine that could help them increasing the capacity of the sanctuary while taking the size of it down actually.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like I said, that would help avoiding building into the bed of Lamoka. Yes, of course, that the parking lot will be there. I believe, I'm not sure if we're gonna still need the waiver. The GCL, I believe we're gonna do, but if the building is reconfigured, looked at the proposed conditions and I put the limit for Lamoka, and I see that it's two tiny pieces of the building. One of them is actually the vestibule. The other thing is a part close to Samson, and if they can reconfigure that sanctuary and eliminate that vestibule, it could be avoided. Building in the bed of Lamoka could be avoided, which is a good thing. And I agree with the community board that the access from Samson should be limited.
Mhm. So what I'm hearing right now is actually two different directions from commissioners. So one saying build more in Lamoka, one group saying
Yes.
build in Lamoka more so that you get away from needing waivers to extend towards Sampson, and another saying don't build in Lamoka. So obviously,
What I'm saying is, look, Samson, the existing building is there. So Samson is done with the existing building, roughly aligned with the first residential on the north. I don't think they're gonna knock down portion of the existing building to provide a front yard on Samson, or to provide a yard. I'm not sure whether this is a front or a side, but to provide a yard on Samson, I don't think we're gonna knock down part of the existing building. So if the existing building is there, it's there. Let's let them build the extension aligned with that. So Samson, in my opinion, Samson is done deal. The existing building is there. If they build aligned with that, that's fine for me. But what's in play right now, what they are asking for, is the other side, Lamoka. And I want to limit the encroachment of the extension into that. How could we do that? Look at the encroachment. The only portions. Let me give me 1 second.
no, but I'm trying to understand. So this is a GCL 35 application, right? To build in the bed of a map street.
Yes.
So my question is, because I can hear the applicant listening saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I'm getting conflicting instructions, but I'm trying to understand. Uh-oh.
You look at this piece.
Yes, no, I
And
understand.
that piece. Yeah,
Yes.
these are the only encroachments into the bed of Lamoka when it comes to
Right.
the building, the proposed extension.
But no, I'm trying to understand why you would be opposed to building in the bed of the map street, which is what the application is. The application is to build in the bed of map Lamoka, right?
You have to avoid it.
But as opposed to getting more front yard waivers under a variance, right? So I'm trying to understand why do you object to building in the bed of the map street? That's what I'm trying to get.
Because are you talking about the front yard on Samson?
I understand that you're saying that there's already a building that's imposing on some of Sampson.
Yes.
But why are you trying to limit the amount of development in the bed of the map street is my question.
Because I believe it's not needed. If they reconfigure the sanctuary, it's not needed. If
Okay.
this is, you see this part of the sanctuary here? This
No,
part,
I understand that, right?
That's
So,
all. And plus this view. That's all.
mhm. Okay.
If you can reconfigure this space by eliminating just this piece, and you reconfigure that vestibule, put it inside, but you don't need the waiver for building in the bed of the map street.
They probably still need a waiver because they're too close to the map street. So there's a front yard setback requirement, and the existing building received a variance to be allowed to project into the front yard arguably along Lamoka. But the proposed, if it's built right up against the street line, it must have a GCL waiver or a variance to be that close to the front lot line, front yard.
And my goal is not to avoid the waiver. My goal is to avoid building in the map. street.
Okay,
And
okay.
it's,
Okay, so we'll continue this because we have different viewpoints on it. Okay, so and it's up to the architect to figure out how to solve the various problems. Okay,
Yep.
is there anything else?
no, thank you.
Okay, and Commissioner Shivetta.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to review some of the statements of Commissioner Sheta, try to see if I understand what he's looking for as a solution. Right now, one of my biggest concerns, and I believe is obviously the concern of the community board with the egress issue on Samsung. I think that's something that I think I've heard most of the board members agree needs to be addressed. What I haven't heard is I believe that this may need an independent noise monitoring. I wasn't satisfied with the position that just because it's at a lower elevation than the elevation that was tested, that the sound should be less. That hasn't always been the case. I'm not an expert in the field. I'd like to hear more from the applicant about that. And I believe the statement was made also in the notice of comments.
Sorry, could you say that again? The noise monitoring?
There's a train station, there are train tracks not too far from this location. And as part of the EAS, they was wondering whether or not the train station would have an adverse effect on a facility here. And frankly, oftentimes, again, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but I wasn't convinced that a noise monitoring wouldn't be independent noise monitoring wouldn't be something that at least may be something that's necessary at this location.
Okay. Tracy has her hand up, so maybe she can respond to that. So I'm recognizing Tracy Benke just to respond to that question.
Yes, we have sent the EAS, including the noise analysis, to DEP for review. So that will be examined. We also sent it for WRP review. And for the hazardous materials, I would ask the applicant to submit all of the reports that were mentioned in the EAS, the phase 1 and limited phase 2. I could not find them in the file. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so back to Commissioner Shibata, please.
That cuts down on most of my comments. That leaves only something that's been addressed a bit today, but and I'm still concerned about the parking issue. That's something the community board has been concerned with, and it seems like they're going to have a lot of activity here. That you can garnish that from the layout, and it looks like it's going to be weekday and weekend activity. I think the community deserves a better look into how they're going to accommodate this parking for the number of guests they're expecting.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's all.
So Commissioner Sheta has his hand up.
Yeah, I just forgot to mention that there is a lighting luminous spread diagram in the as-of-right drawings. And I'm not sure why it's not provided with the proposed. If it's provided with the as-of-right, it should be provided with the proposed. I just forgot to mention this.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other comments from commissioners? No, nothing else? Okay. Okay. Oh, yes, Commissioner Shanda, who has her actual instead of.
I'm sorry, I
hand up.
forgot the protocol. I think the discussions that we are hearing with regards to how to contain the building program that justifies their need, and second of all, where that encroachment should be or where that enlargement should be. I think a lot also depends on definitely the programmatic need. They need to strengthen that. but also the neighborhood character. I think to me, those are two very important factors to determine where the bulk should reside. And not to mention, what DOT states. If DOT thinks that Limoka is an important street that needs to be retained, then we have to approach it in a very different way. So I think both the solutions are interesting in their own way, but the approach to the solution, in my mind, lies on those three factors.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay, no other comments, so I guess we can move on then. Oops, I'm sorry, I muted Tony. We're coughing. I was trying to make it quiet.
Sorry.
Okay.
This concludes the public review session for May 5th, 2020, 2 p.m. So we'll now commence with the public hearing for May 5th, 2020. Item number 1 is 2019-306BZ, 49 West 23rd Street, Manhattan. This is the law office of Jay Goldstein is the applicant.
And
Please call in.
he's already dialed in.
Okay. This concludes the public review session.
Uh-oh, turn off your video, please.
2020, 2 p.m. So we'll now commence with the public.
Jay, please turn off your video.
Off.
Okay, raise your right hand. Dear friend, to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions.
I do.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Jay Goldstein for the applicant. I listened to the review session this afternoon. I'd like to address the questions and concerns. First, with regard to the ADA question, there is a private studio in the cellar. However, if there's someone who requires or who requests private training, it'll be accommodated in the main studio after hours. That's how and there are lockers on the first floor behind the reception.
I'm sorry, what are after hours?
After, like, in between classes, it'll be scheduled so that it's not, if there's a class going on, it'll be scheduled around the classes. Same way they do it with private training. In reality, there's an elevator that is directly accessible to the cellar. The landlord didn't want that as the ADA solution for this space, so that's why we put the bathroom there, and that's why we accommodate ADA in our space in the first floor. However, in reality, the cellar is accessible through the building elevator. It's a commercial building, and if someone wants private training, they will likely go in the elevator and have it in the cellar. But we are compliant with ADA in the first floor. With regard to the other comments, the plans on A004 are keyed into the sound attenuation plans. You see the diamonds with the H1.
Oh, yeah.
They are keyed in throughout. To my knowledge, there are no complaints I checked with the operators about 20 minutes ago. There are no complaints for the use. It has been open since October. And the final comment with regard to the 100 square feet occupancy, if you turn to sheet A002 of the proposed, we actually give a full chart that explains that. So it's not a legend on the sheet, and I going forward can do that, but we do provide a full zoning analysis with the occupancy table.
Right. It tells you the same information that you would get off the drawings.
Exactly.
In a different place.
It's not keyed to each other. There's no legend. I apologize, and going forward, we can clear that up. It's something that, again, I just took for granted.
Yeah. So for Commissioner Sheta, it's A004 is where you see the indications for I forgot to mention that, for the acoustical keys, H1 and so on. It's only the first floor plan that has it. The cellar plan doesn't have it.
Well, the private studio at the cellar, sorry, no, private studio does not have it. It's
No.
one person, no.
It's not keyed to the cellar level, but I get why.
No, the prior plan had the prior case from this morning had the private studio at the first floor, so we did have the sound attenuation at the first floor, but here it wasn't necessary.
Right. Okay. Yeah, here it's lockers, and which are sound attenuators of a form also, right?
And it's also one-on-one with no music, and no weights.
Right. Okay.
I believe that was all of the questions for this.
DOB violations, Jay.
DUB violations with regard to
think Commissioner
sprinklers, that was
Nash-
FDNY confirmed that it was satisfactorily tested and gave a letter of no objection.
We wanted to know whether there were complaints. That was the question, actually.
No, as mentioned, I reached out to the operator about 20 minutes ago, and to my knowledge, to their knowledge, there have been no complaints. And we've been up until March, we were open since October, and we had no issues. It's a commercial building, and we did provide proof of posting in the lobby of the commercial building to the board. So people were notified, both through mailings and through postings, but there were no complaints. And unless the board has information I don't, I think there are no complaints.
There is someone in the waiting room. I don't know if that person's related to you or wants to speak on this application. There's Gary Comis in the waiting room. Is that someone you know?
No.
No. So either he's waiting for the next application, in which case he should hang up, or he's waiting to speak on this application, which is 49 West 23rd Street, Manhattan. Okay. So, any other comments, or Jay, that you wanted? Anything else?
I believe that was all the comments or questions to me. If there are any
Okay.
other comments, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, anything from any other commissioners? If so, raise your hand in some version or other. Okay, so there are two people in the waiting room. I hope they are calling in. I just lost them. About
2019-306BZ, 49 West 23rd Street. That is the case we are discussing now. If you're calling for that, then stay on the line. If not, please hang up.
So there's someone in the waiting room whose last three digits are 667. So I hope that 667 is waiting to speak on 49 West 23rd Street, because we are about to admit you into the waiting room to discuss that case. A little delay for you to hear that announcement. Hung up. Okay. Okay, so I don't see anyone in the waiting room. So therefore, I think we have everything we need on this, and I'd like to make a motion to close.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you
good
very
day.
much.
So,
You too.
so no submission on this, Madam
No
Chair.
submission, right.
Okay, just want to make sure, make a notation of that. Okay,
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
okay.
Thank you.
Next item is 2019-265BZ, 60371A, 35 Giffords Lane, Staten Island. Office of LaBelle. David Rosenberg should be calling in.
Okay, here we go. Speak when you can hear us, Mr. Rosenberg.
I am here, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. All
Is
right.
anyone else calling in with you, David?
Pastor Gary Comis, the architect Jeffrey
Okay.
Parker, and Kevin Williams, the environmental consultant, last digit 667.
Great. Okay, Mr. Comas just is connecting.
Pastor Comas is connecting already.
Pastor, sorry. Speak when you can hear us, Mr. Rosenberg.
I am here, Madam Chair.
Okay, Pastor Comas, please turn off your video.
Pastor Gary Comis, the architect Jeffrey Parker, and Kevin Williams, the
Ah,
environmental
delay.
consultant, last digit 667.
Please turn off your video, Pastor Comas, and also 667, please turn off your video.
Sorry.
Speak when you can hear us.
Turn off your video.
I am here, Madam Chair.
Mr. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, please turn off your video, because we get feedback and it happens what feels like 60 seconds after we say it. Okay, so Tony, you want to proceed?
I thought it was waiting for the architect. All right.
So we have
Okay.
667 has called in. Just state your name, please. The person who's
Oh, he
on.
muted. He muted.
No, he's not. Oh, he muted.
He
The
muted.
person whose number is 667. Please state your name.
Kevin Williams.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to swear you in, Mr. Rosenberg. I don't know if the pastor wants to. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
The pastor.
Yeah, everyone gets.
Pastor? He's muted. I don't know.
Unmute. Here we go. Unmute. I can't do it. Unmute yourself, please.
Pastor Comas, could you unmute yourself, please?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, everyone gets.
Pastor?
Yes,
Pastor?
yes.
You must turn off your video.
Okay, I'm trying to,
He's muted. I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out, I'm sorry.
Unmute.
Esther, I think that the chair is referring to closing the YouTube video and not the video on Zoom.
Unmute yourself, please.
Pastor Comas, could you unmute yourself, please?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
No.
Yes.
You must turn off your video.
Okay, What- I'm trying to,
He's muted. I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out, I'm sorry.
Yes, I think, Pastor, you need to close the YouTube video in your web browser. Video, not the video on Zoom.
Unmute yourself, please. Wow, the time delay is so extraordinary.
Fascinating, right? It's like, wow.
Is that better?
Perfect.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
great. Mhm.
Okay, so I swore everyone in. I have to re-swear you in.
Do
I'm
it-
sorry,
do it
because I
again.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Mr. Rosenberg, proceed, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. David Rosenberg of Sheldon Loeb LPC on behalf of the applicant, Faith Community Church. We heard the board's comments in the review session a few moments ago, and while I obviously have not yet had the time to speak with the client and the design team to deal with some of the substantive comments, we do know that there are outstanding issues with respect to DEP. We also received the fire department letter from about an hour ago, and will respond to that as well. With respect to the board's comments on the plans, we understand the board's comments. I will work with the architect, who I believe is having trouble at the moment getting onto Zoom.
Oh.
Will to be able to go through for a complete zoning analysis, identify each of the waivers with respect to both Article 2 and with respect to the Special South Richmond District. Though I believe that other than with respect to parking, they end up the Article 107 ends up referring back. But regardless, we'll provide a full zoning analysis for this. And with respect to the board's comments about the two schools of thought with reconfiguring the space, obviously I haven't had the chance to have that discussion, but based on the discussion that we have today during this hearing, we will go back, and insofar as any of the requested waivers change as a result of that, we will change those as well. Kevin Williams of Equity Environmental, our environmental consultant, is on as well to speak about with specificity about the parking study, as well as Commissioner Shabetta's concerns about the noise analysis and anything related to that. Before I have Pastor Comas speak more about the church and the program and their specific needs here, I just wanted to speak a little bit about the community board, and we understand their concerns, and these are concerns that we commonly hear when proposing a house of worship in an R2 district. We do, though, provide the most parking that zoning allows us to provide in the special South Richmond district. We'd like to provide more parking. We just can't. We also note that some of the recommendations from the community board are somewhat contradictory, particularly shifting the building more towards Giffords Lane and away from Sampson Avenue would also necessitate that the parking end up with its primary entrance and exit by Sampson Avenue, which we understand the board is not favorable of based on the comments earlier. With respect to the roof and fire code,
Hey,
obviously,
could you slow down a little bit? So first of all, the community board's suggestion to move the building, you need to address, my understanding is you're trying to enlarge the building, not tear it down and rebuild it, unless you're thinking that what they're suggesting is that you enlarge the building in that direction. But my understanding is you can't, you don't own that property, right? There's a intervening property between you and Giffords.
yes.
So I'm not sure how, when they say move it towards Gifford, I don't understand what they mean by that.
My sense of the community board's thought being in that meeting was that because that one property on Giffords is not ours, that's a parking lot, we don't use it, we don't have any control over it, we don't, it's not part of our application. My sense of what the community board was looking for was essentially to build further on the bed of the mapped street.
Oh.
And have the building physically away from Sampson Avenue.
Right,
And
but so
towards
in order
Giffords.
to do that, you would need to tear the building down completely,
At
right?
least in a substantial part. But it did not seem that the community board was particularly concerned with the fact that there was an existing building. I think at one point during the meeting, a member of the land use committee said, well, you should have found a building in which you can build this as of right, which obviously would have been ideal, but the law with respect to houses of worship and zoning deference in New York does not align with that.
Mhm. Okay.
With respect to the community board's comments about energy code and fire code, obviously the relief that we get from the Board of Standards and Appeals is only related to the zoning waivers requested and the DCL waivers requested. Otherwise, we have to comply entirely with all applicable codes. I think just one comment from Commissioner Otley Brown that I wanted to refer to before the pastor can speak about the congregation. With respect to the shuttle, Commissioner Otley Brown had raised the concern that we didn't specify exactly when those shuttles would operate. In many other applications regarding certain educational uses, where the board has found that a shuttle service is a good offset for an inability to meet parking demand on site, we have recorded restrictive declarations that require the applicant to run it during peak hours, with the understanding that the applicant has to use its judgment to figure out when those hours are. And we have not yet specified exactly in a recorded document when those peak hours are and when those shuttles have to run.
Mhm. Okay, I just wanted to go back to your comment about the zoning analysis. And I know Commissioner Otley Brown's hand is up and I will recognize her in a second. I think the point is that the zoning analysis appears to be very incorrect. It does not treat the property as a corner lot, and it fronts on two map streets. So it needs to be treated as a corner lot and an interior lot. And so then all the regulations are different. And then you're also looking at the ability of 7201G under a GCL 35 to waive your front yard requirements. So perhaps there's a way to more or less avoid the variance entirely or mostly, or reduce the scope of the waivers and so on. It needs to be done very systematically. So don't sort of gloss over that because we think it's incorrect. I think Commissioner Shanda and I went through it and most of it didn't make sense. That's why it needs to be broken down very carefully. Okay.
That's understood. And in our next submission, it will be a full page zoning analysis more akin to what we see on some other applications, going through all of the relevant sections, identifying the section number, what the requirement is and what's being proposed. And we will then identify what waivers are necessary.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Otley Brown.
You actually did say that your shuttle will operate Sundays from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. So you did identify the peak period that the shuttle was going to work. I was just wondering, is this going to be like an every 15-minute thing, or is it just going to be a continuous run where you're stopping, picking up whoever happens to be there, dropping them off, and turning around and just keep going until the worship service starts? Because it just seems to me, if it's like an every 20-minute thing, I'm just gonna try and park somewhere in the neighborhood or walk through the neighborhood. I'm not gonna wait. So that was just my question, to see what is the chance of this successfully working to limit the amount of people who walk through the neighborhood, as well as those who drive in and just try and park anywhere, which we know sometimes ends up with blocking driveways and the like.
Mm-hmm. My understanding is that that a version of the shuttle service does run currently in their current substandard facilities. And so I think Pastor Combs can speak more to it, but I also understand that this is envisioned to be operated by the church as needed. So it will, in the times leading up to the Sunday worship services and in the times immediately following, it will be running constantly.
Okay. Okay. Did you want to have someone else?
Yeah, I think at this point, Pastor Comus can talk about the background of the congregation, and they're now, it's been almost 4 years working towards this project of giving them a permanent house of worship.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I will, if you would allow me.
State your name, please. State your name.
Yes, Pastor Gary Comus from Faith Community Church.
Go ahead.
Okay. Just as an introduction, I just wanted to give everybody a brief overview of our congregation and what we do and what we've done over the years. We have been serving the Staten Island community since 1992, and within the 28-year period, we have provided a number of programs, not only for men and women, but young adults, children, as well as seniors. And our programs do run throughout the week, but there is a significant difference in our midweek activity as opposed to Sunday morning. Sunday morning is really our main service, and we begin Sunday service, our history is, at 10 a.m., and we usually conclude by 12. Throughout the week, in our facility, the facility that we're operating out of now at 70 Winthrop Place, it encompasses our administrative offices, and we have smaller rooms here that we conduct seminars and what we call life groups, Bible studies, and so forth. All of the activity that is running throughout the week, we do not get any more than about 35 to 40 people on any given day throughout the week. So, and we have, like I said, different opportunities for people to come for Bible studies and such, but we do not have any more than about 35 or 40 people coming. And this has been going on for quite some time. In this particular area, we do, in my facility right now, we do not have a parking lot at all. We've rented and leased out what used to be an office space, and we just converted it. And we've been here for more than 15, close to 20 years, and we have not had one complaint whatsoever from any of our neighbors concerning infringing in their driveway or a lack of respect in any way. And we would certainly carry over that same respect in this new community in Great Kills. So the bulk of our activity is really on a Sunday morning. And on Sunday morning right now, we are leasing a space at the UA Theater, 2474 Forest Avenue. Actually, our last physical service was March 15th. We have moved since then all of our programs, services, everything that we do to online opportunities. But we're still carrying the lease there at the theater. The congregation size at that theater on a Sunday morning is about 180 to 200 right now. And so at 80% capacity in the theater that we're in several years ago, we began looking for another facility in order to grow and to better meet the needs of our community. We found this location in Great Kills, and one of the main reasons why we chose this location is because 75% of our congregants, those who support Faith Community Church over the years, actually live on the South Shore of Staten Island. In your previous comments, Madam Chair, you had mentioned there was a 20-minute drive and a 17-minute drive. That's the reason why. Most of our congregants are from Mid-Island to the South Shore of Staten Island. So one of the main reasons why we were looking in that area, obviously, is to really build within the heart of our community. It creates a better value, ministry value in meeting their needs as well as reaching out to their family and friends. So we chose this facility. It was available. It is certainly not the ideal facility for the very reasons why we're in this discussion today, but we believe it's the right facility for us. One of the main reasons, one of our main programs that we offer is reaching out to those who are less advantaged, those who have been struggling with drug addiction on the island. And one of the epicenters of the drug culture on Staten Island happens to be right across the street in that train station. And when I had mentioned this to our congregation that we were purchasing this facility, I had a number of young people in my congregation came up to me after service that Sunday, as well as their families. And they said to me, Pastor, I used to buy drugs right across the street in that train station. And they were so excited that now a church, their church, is moving back and they can be on this other side of the effects and then now help bring their friends out of this culture. What better place for a church to be than right across the street from an epicenter where drugs are sold? We're committed to this. We've been doing this for many, many years. Their families have been serving in our church for many years. I've had the opportunity to officiate their weddings. And so we have seen great success in reaching out to all different members of the community. So on a Sunday morning, and going back to some previous comments by the commissioners, to scale down the size of this auditorium to 132 or even 150, if the calculations were a little off, is far below what we're doing now. Right now, we have 180 to 200 people. There's no way, if we just built an as of right building, there's no way we could actually continue to service the needs of our community. People would be leaving, and certainly we wouldn't be growing. So it's very difficult, and that's why we with the possibility of growth, the average growth for us over the last several years has been about 4%. And so we figured, as far as with our cost in building a building, let's go on the small side and not certainly build too big that we can't afford it. So our minimal size was to accommodate 240 seats, which would give us an average growth, if we maintain that 4% every year, to about 240, 250 in 5 years. That gives us enough time to grow and to continue to meet the needs of our community. So we believe that the plans that we put forward are on very minimal as far as that's concerned, and meeting the needs of not only our current congregation, but we have also just 4 separate rooms that we've provided for our children's programs. We have nursery, we have pre-K to 2nd grade, we are ministering to 3rd to 5th grade, and then also 6th to 8th. And providing that, again, at a minimal basis, would fit within the plans, the proposed plans that we had offered. That community, that space in the middle of the cafe, it's our community cafe, that is a multi-purpose meeting room. And again, it's very minimal in size, and it's just a place for people to come, grab a cup of coffee in the morning and say hello to their family and friends, and then go to church. The children's programs are running in tandem with our Sunday program. So parents come in, they sign their kids into children's church, and then they go to adult service. The lobby, according to our architect, is built again on a minimal size in order to accommodate the size of the crowd that may be in our building, which would be to accommodate 240 seats. So the lobby is not oversized at all. The size of the sanctuary is certainly not oversized at all because it accommodates just for minimal growth over a 5-year period. The upstairs was also mentioned. We have offices up there. Right now, I am leasing the place that I'm in right now doing this video is a 2,400 square foot office facility. We have administrative offices as well as other programming needs that we run in this particular building. We currently employ 4 people, and we have volunteer staff that come in throughout the day or several days a week in order to help with the administrative needs of the church. We've been running this church for 28 years. We have a lot to do. We are busy. So to suggest that we don't need offices and maybe turn that into a children's program or whatever is not accurate at all. We need office space in order to do the administrative work that we do.
Okay, before you go on, I need to just interrupt. There is someone in the waiting room.
That's the, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, that's the architect, Jeff Parker, he's 616.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's the
so yes,
architect.
admit him. Okay, so I'm admitting him. I know Commissioner Otley Brown's hand is up, but I do want to say that the reason that we're concluding that you're asking for too much is because the materials that were submitted to us don't justify the need for any of the space, right? So you need to work with your lawyer and your architect to better describe why each space is needed and why it needs to be the size that it is, because at the moment it doesn't say that in the submitted papers. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Otley Brown because she had her hand up, and that way she can direct those questions to you also. Okay.
Yes, in response to the pastor, when you quoted the 150 seats being still too low amount of seats to accommodate the congregation, when I was talking about getting a standardized square foot per seat number that you could apply to both as of right and proposed, what I was really getting at was not that you should be content with the as of right worship room accommodating only 150 people, but just getting at the fact that if you do rate that room at 150 people, you may find out that you don't need as much space to get to your target of 240 congregants as you thought you did, because you've got a much higher square foot per seat for your as of right than you do for your proposed. So that's what I was getting at. If we could standardize the square foot per seat and square foot per person, then we can get a better read on whether or not the as of right is not suitable for your congregation. And if so, what we really need in terms of additional space to accommodate you.
Right. So this is actually a question for the architect who is just dialed in, and Tony, you need to
I swear him in. Hi,
state your name, please.
state your name.
090, please state your name.
Jeffrey Parker.
Okay, I'm going to swear you in, Mr. Parker, okay?
Thank you.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I certainly do.
Okay, if you could respond to the
Yes.
question.
So the issue had to do with the non-standard size that's being used to calculate the area of the sanctuary and how many seats it fits. That in the as of right, you've got a standard of, what is it,
11.5 square feet per seat. And in the proposed, you have 9.8 square feet per seat. And then you have the DOB occupancy listed at 7 square feet per seat.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was a little distracted trying to get used to how you use Zoom.
Okay.
but I think I have it finally. I was trying to tie in by using my Zoom feature on my computer. Anyway, you were asking about the disparity or the difference between the actual occupancy that we're listing and the occupancy per square foot.
No, it's the disparity between your as of right occupancy criteria and your proposed occupancy criteria. They're different by 2 square feet, so you're getting more people in one version in the proposed than you are in the as of right.
Our intention in showing seating capacity is to show how many seats can actually fit in there. The 1 person per square feet or anything that is of that nature has more to do with building codes, but it's not realistic for how you can actually fit people in there. What we have shown on the proposed floor plans are 240 chairs, and that's how many seats can fit in there, and it would really be not possible to put more in there. Faith community needs space between the front row of seats and the platform for what they call altar calls, where during the service people come forward to pray with the pastoral team. This is during the service, so they need that gap there as part of their church service. And then on the platform itself, they have instruments like some guitars, a few singers, a small drum set, things like that, that would fill that platform space. So between the platform and then that gap between the front of the platform and the first row of seats, and then the seating itself, you can fit 240 seats in there, and that's it.
Right, that answers the first question that I had, which was the deviation from the DOB 7 square feet per seat versus the amount of seats that you have in each sanctuary, but it doesn't answer the second question that I had, which is why your as of right square feet per seat is much higher than your proposed square feet per seat, which leads you to believe that your as of right can fit less people than it could if you use the same factor that you're using for the proposed.
With the as of right worship space, again, we laid out the seats were the most that you could fit in there, and have sight lines where you can see the platform. And so in this case, there are 132 seats shown, and because of the configuration of the space, it's not, you can't fit more seats in than that. And so you can take those 132 seats and divide it into the square footage.
Jeff, if I can just jump in, and I think I'm going to clarify your point to what Commissioner Otley Brown is asking, that not all of the space.
No. I'm sorry. He was doing a great job. We were following right along. Don't interrupt. Please let him finish.
So on the as of right, we tried actually to fit as many as we could. And so you can see on that one that the gap between the front to the platform and the front row of seats is less than on the proposed. And that gapped area there is actually not large enough to have folks come forward during services to pray with the pastoral staff. So that area is actually tight, and then the 132 seats are really the most that you can realistically fit in there, laid out like we've shown it, and then the platform is not as wide in this one, and so there's really not enough space on the platform for them to have their instruments and singers and pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that plan really does not work for them, and it's actually fitting lots of people in there for the 132 seats, but that's all that we could fit in there.
Mm-hmm.
It would be helpful if on the next plans, you dimension the
Yes.
different sides of each sanctuary, as well as dimension the aisles and the space in the front, so that this way you can kind of see where there's no way you'd be able to put another row in or another small grouping of seats.
Mm-hmm.
I would be happy to do that.
Right. Because I guess, so part of it is just that length of where the platform is. In the proposed, it's 55 feet long. And in the as of right, it's 46 feet long. So it's almost a 10-foot difference right there. So you have more frontage, sort of more front row seating up against that length. So you can kind of automatically see that you only get those 5 seats up against the one side in the as of right, and you get almost a complete row, arguably. So I guess, it would only make a difference of a few seats, but what is the reason for not having a complete row in the front row? You cut your row short.
Would you mind if Pastor Comus explains to you what goes on there?
Sure.
Between the front row seats and the platform? Because
Sure.
it's a programming issue that happens during their services.
But specifically, it's your front row only has whatever it is, maybe 8 seats, whereas the next row has like 12. So why wouldn't your front row also have 12? I guess that's the question.
Yes, I could respond to that. We could certainly put the 12 there, but the reason why we left that space open is for the opportunity for people to come forward. We normally have this on a weekly basis. After many times after I teach or I preach, there's a time of worship, there's a time of prayer where I invite the public to come forward, and then the ministerial staff, and we pray along with the people. And when you have half of your congregation coming forward, you need as much space as possible in the front. And so we've chosen to leave that space there. That's why we haven't put those chairs in. We would love for it to stay that way so that we could constantly have more people coming forward and having the space in order to minister to them properly. That's the reason why we've shown it this way.
It would be helpful if you would include that in your programmatic needs statement, because that would justify why it doesn't look as efficiently laid out as perhaps it could be.
Right.
And then go ahead, Commissioner Arlie Brown, continue.
No, I'm sorry, I just coughed, sorry.
Okay, so because I have a question, since the architect is here and this is so helpful. My view of how to expand the space is different than what Commissioner Sheta expressed, but an architect is the one who has to figure out the solutions anyhow, right? So, but for example, if you expanded more into Lamoka, into the map street, and didn't expand into the front yard of Sampson, might it be possible to reconfigure the sanctuary space in some way? Well, maybe it's reoriented, for example, that it goes, I don't know which direction this is. Instead of going up, down, it goes left, right. Something like that. I mean, it's a different configuration of your building. Which way is
well, we could certainly look at that as an option. What we were trying to do is utilize the existing building to the best that we could, and part of what we've been doing is the existing exterior wall that faces Sampson is painted cement block, and we were planning to skin over that with brick and stone and limestone banding, so it matches the rest of the building, so that looks like a front to the building rather than not. rather than it being not so nice looking.
Mhm.
So we're planning on doing that, and then as part of that, we extended that wall straight across, maybe another I don't know, like 10 feet or 15 feet or so, so that wall is aligned and then it jogs back. We still have, before we get to the sidewalk, 18 feet of landscaping, and what we were thinking is that if we provided that much landscaping there, it's really quite a bit more than they have at the senior center across the street, and we would have an enhanced front between the sidewalk, the landscaping, and an attractive, really a new looking front. If it's stepped back, then the building might look actually more cobbled up than trying to take what's sort of a quirky building right now and make it look and feel as if it were intentional.
Mhm. But
So
it's
that-
actually not, it's not an 18-foot front. It's 11'9" on your drawings. It's the property line, unless I'm misunderstanding your drawings. There's a 5-foot walk, which
I'm
seems.
sorry, you're right. I was looking at the as of right one. It's 11'9", and we built the front a few inches closer so that we would have room to skin across the existing building
Uh-huh.
with the brick and stone.
Mhm.
And so, yes, you're right. We would have 11'9" there, rather than 18 feet, but that's still a lot of landscaping, and it's trying to relate to what's there already. So
I don't know if you were able to hear the comments that were made before we started the hearing, where we each of us talked quite a long time about the application. But one of the comments, and you can listen to it on YouTube, the recording of this on YouTube, so you can hear all the specifics. But Commissioner Shanda, she talked about the idea of like, how do we make a decision which way the building should expand, right? And really the way is to look at neighborhood character. And so when you're talking about continuing to reduce the front yard there to align with the existing portion of the building, you need to make a case for why that alignment works within neighborhood character, as opposed to providing a front yard on that side and then orienting the building, or let's say the sanctuary, more into La Moca. So that's really the classic role of the architect, right? To make the neighborhood character urbanism argument that this is the right way to go, not just for the building, but for the Sampson very residential experience.
and in looking at that as an option, would you be suggesting that we should tear off the end of the existing building as part of that?
Well, I wouldn't say no to it, but that's one way of addressing it, right? That would probably, from my point of view, I like the idea of improving the front yard conditions so that it's more residential in character relative to this area. But that's really for you to look at as the architect, conscious and conscientious about the impact on the neighborhood, to see how the expansion might work with respect to that, and to argue it for us, because we have a neighborhood character finding that we need to make.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. you want to go on, or did the pastor want to go on to continue?
Well, are there any specific questions? Because there was a lot of issues that were brought up with our programmatic needs that, you know, as it relates to the size of each facility, the children's educational programs and all of that. I would love to have the opportunity to help clarify any concerns, you know, if there's any other questions where that's concerned.
I had a specific question, and of course we would, and I see Commissioner Sheta's hand is up, but I also want to say that the explanation in the materials that were submitted really wasn't clear, which is why I would like you, the architect, and your lawyer to sit down and talk through the program so that it gets committed into visuals and into the written statement of findings, because as far as we were concerned, it's just showing we have offices, we need offices. That's the end of that. It doesn't say how many staff or what the sizes of the offices are. It doesn't talk about the educational programs. It just says that there are some. And so we're used to much more detailed justification for that. But you had said that you have a pre-K to second grade and something else. Is that something that happens during the week?
That happens twice a week. On a Wednesday evening, which is we call it our midweek service. We begin our midweek service at 7:30 in the evening. It usually lasts from 7:30 to 9. We also accommodate, again, running in tandem with our midweek service, parents come out with their children. And so we have the opportunity for children's church as well during Wednesday evening. So that will accommodate nursery. It would also accommodate all the age groups that I discussed before, pre-K to second grade, 3 to 5, and then 6 to 8. That happens on a Wednesday night. But again, the numbers on a Wednesday night are far less than a Sunday morning. So we do that on a Wednesday night. And then on a Sunday morning, in ministering to the needs of the children, I have a breakdown. If this is, I can just read through one, Madam Chair, and let me know if this is what you're looking for as far as the detail is concerned, because we did work through this in order for you to really have clarification. So let's take one of the children's programs, let's say 3 to 5, third grade to 5th grade. I broke it down this way for you. The purpose is to provide Bible instruction for 3rd to 5th grade students whose parents are attending the adult worship service. The schedule is 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning to 12, Wednesday 7:30 to 9. The program needs include teaching, discussion, worship, and prayer. The square footage is relating to that particular room, which is 230 square feet. And then we broke down some architectural standards, and the attendance in that room would be 12, no more than 12. That's the way we broke down every room, including the upstairs, how many people are working. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, exactly what we're looking for.
Because I have that already. I mean, I've got that right here, and I can certainly submit that to you. It breaks down every room and every need, the occupants of the room, to show you exactly what we do.
Right. And so what could be help with that is you have 12 kids in a typical session. How is it decided the size of the room? So that's usually the architect says, well, for 12 kids, you need a room X big, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
It's based on the square footage, based on obviously the proposed plans, in order to meet our current needs with a small room for growth.
Right. Okay.
I'd also note that page 13 of the Statement of Facts and Findings outlines each of these rooms and the proposed occupancy at various times throughout the week, but we will specify this with specific reference to the architectural drawings and the standards used to create those.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Okay, and Commissioner Sheta has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. The issue with the spaces that I talked about was not that we didn't have information about these spaces, how big they are, what they're going to be used for. The issue is we didn't get a programmatic needs description that fits that. And what I asked, what I mentioned actually was not a question for the need of for these rooms. It was more on the side of explain to us why you need these rooms. And that's what we call it programmatic needs. The programmatic needs section in the statement of facts is a tiny paragraph. It needs to be elaborated upon. This is one thing. The other thing, if I hear Mr. Parker talking about probably knocking down portion of the building to create the front yard, if providing the front yard, it's gonna be over the entire frontage of the proposed building to make it align with the existing residential, I would be okay with extending the building into Lamoka. I would be fine with that. My point was front yard, according to the existing condition, which my understanding was is not gonna be changed, is almost gone. It's not gonna be like too much deficient to the proposed if half of the building will be encroaching in the yard and then sit back to provide the yard. But if the proposal on the table right now is to cut the existing building for the encroachment into the yard and provide a front yard over the entire frontage, that would be beautiful. I'm okay. I'm totally okay with that. And I support the extension into the other side.
Okay.
I'd say that with respect to reconfiguring the existing building and possibly taking any part of it, based on the comments, both at the review session and this hearing, the pastor, the architect, and I, and the other stakeholders in this project will sit down to discuss what the best option is responsive to the board's comments.
Okay, great. Commissioner Shanda has her hand up.
I think in light of what you just stated, I would say that I was just going to suggest that because the existing building is an L-shaped building with a 25-foot frontage of the building on Sampson. So maybe you retain that portion of the building and whatever is proposed, it's further set back from Sampson and try to orient it in a way that you retain a little bit deeper front yard for the remaining portion of the proposed instead of having to tear down even the existing portion. So I think there is a lot of room to play maybe.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I because I don't want to confuse. That's again, before we started off with two directions that were in opposition. Now we're in two directions or three directions that are in opposition. I guess what I want to just say to clarify for the architect, it's the architect's job to figure out a good solution.
Fair enough.
That if the solution tears down a portion or doesn't tear down a portion, the guiding principle is the neighborhood character and how it's relating this building, however reconfigured, to the community, because I don't want to confuse by, I remember this would happen to me as an applicant. I don't know what to do now. The whole team would go back and say, we don't know what to do now. We got 5 different directions. So the direction
Fair
is
enough.
do a good project.
I was just in my mind, I was trying to be mindful of the fact that, how do you try to retain the extent of the existing building you can and not have to encroach any bit more or make it more incongruous.
Mhm.
But I agree. I think the direction that I think we have given and you have understood it is, those are the elements and work within those to see how we can solve the issue.
Mhm. Okay.
I think if that address is at least gives us direction to discuss programmatic needs further, it may be worth discussing the parking and other environmental concerns.
Yes.
For that, I'd ask Kevin Williams of Equity Environmental to jump in.
Hi, this is Kevin, Equity Environmental. I apologize, and I'm sincerely embarrassed, but I had technical difficulties during your review comment period related, I know you had comments related to parking and I believe noise. So I apologize to have you sort of restate some of those issues, and certainly I'll listen to the comments again and respond in full,
Tracy.
post hearing.
Right. I think actually, though, that the simplest would be, rather than you trying to wing it here, that you go back and take a look at your analysis and then respond to the questions that were posed in that review session and by the community board. The general gist of it is the architect also needs to know that there are no parking calculations on the drawings. So, which we know for zoning purposes rely on the size of the largest worship space.
Right.
So we're thinking, but we don't know, we're thinking that the minimum required parking, and as it turns out, the maximum required parking is already provided on site, but that the
Right.
parking analysis is indicating that there are quite a lot of people who will be coming by car based on both your survey and other analyses, your demand studies. So there were a lot of questions about whether you could rely on the various off-site parking areas for that, for sort of overflow. And then there was a question also about the shuttle bus and its frequency, and whether a person really would use the shuttle bus to park at a distance, or just say, no way, I'm just going to triple park over here while I'm waiting
Right.
for going in, running into the church for however long you stay in the church, and double, triple park, and therefore being an annoyance to the community. That's a general gist. Did I leave
Yep.
anything out? Does anybody want to throw anything else in there? So I think it would be more efficient if you listened to the comments and responded to them, because in your domain, it's very technical.
I'm with you, Chair. Yeah, I agree. Sounds
And
good.
Tracy listed all the items that he needs to submit as a backup documentation, the phase one, the phase.
Right, yeah. And yeah, we were missing phase 1 and phase 2. And I just recognized Commissioner Sheta, who wanted to,
Yeah, just the capacity of the parking across the street, the Friendship Club parking, and the
So-
parking extract. It was considered. This is page 10 of 12.
Commissioner
table-
Sheta,
table-
just want to jump in really quickly with respect to that lot. It was revised in other areas of the EAS and revised submissions, but that parking that's referred to there for Friendship Circle is not a parking lot. That's on-street park. That's existing
Yes,
on-street
that's what
parking.
I'm saying. Yes, that's what I'm saying. You mentioned in the table shows 36 spaces. I counted the spaces for the lot itself, and apparently all the spaces outside are on street. The only spaces that apparently belong to the parking lot, probably about less than 10.
Right.
I'm not
And,
sure.
and so, I mean, that kind of just goes to the point there, the pictures we showed they're empty. It is improperly labeled as a lot. There are only 6 that are tied to the Friendship Club. The rest of them are 90-degree pull-in parking, and it's public, and all of them were empty on the Sunday in which we evaluated that area, and available for parking with no time controls during that period. But yes, it's incorrectly stated. The field individual documented it as it reads in plan and on site as a service lot, when it in fact is not.
But
And
it
you're
does-
saying
but it
you're
does-
saying during your monitoring on Sunday, the on-street parking was totally available. All the spaces around the Friendship Club.
Throughout the
Available?
entire neighborhood, in fact, almost no on-street parking. We didn't want to include that because we don't want to be a nuisance, but this particular area directly adjacent to the church, entirely empty with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 cars.
Okay, so when you provide parking calculations and evaluation for the available parking, are you going to exclude these 36 spaces from your study?
Well, so no. And what we'll come back with, as we do in all all facility analysis of this type in churches, and we've been before the board many times as we provide an on-street parking count. Here, the idea at the direction of the pastor was to avoid, that they will make all attempts to use publicly accessible parking and use the shuttle. Having said that, considering this was used in our calculation in terms of parking availability, I think we have to holistically, go back and consider a real world scenario where folks use both the publicly available lot that's approximately a 5-minute walk that we identified, and that we consider the use of some on-street parking resources. In addition, given what the pastor said earlier, so I started this analysis almost a year or so ago. So this was done quite a while ago, and certain parameters in terms of where the patronage derives from, and the statement that the pastor made that this is more located towards residents, I think it would be more helpful to the board to reconsider the 97% drive component here and look at the fact that we're right next to a train station. And so I want to, Commissioner Shedd, I want to basically appropriately respond to your comment and provide a more holistic assessment of parking and utilization given real world conditions. And so this particular area on Schley, needs to be removed as sort of a partnership agreement between, the proposed church and the Friendship Club, and needs to be properly assigned as the use of public parking. So.
Right. And public transit.
And public transit, right. Yeah, we started this out as like a super conservative assessment. And, my apologies, as the months have come by, there's been a little bit more programmatic information. There's, when we first did this, we did not survey zip codes or addresses of arrivers, which is one of the common methods when you look at evaluating parking on such religious facilities, and we will certainly provide that additional information.
Okay, so it sounds like you're going to kind of reframe the entire parking.
Tighten it up.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Okay, quick question. The questionnaire you perform, when you ask the congregants, did you ask them when it comes to the new proposed location or with the temporary location?
So, I mean, it was how they arrive currently, and that was a flaw in the survey. And that it really needs to be directed towards how they intend, and then look at where they're arriving from. So yeah, the question needs to be redirected. I think the idea is, when we looked at it, generally people are going to sort of come the way they always do, and church is sort of a special type of thing where families do get together, and getting 2 or 3 family members in a car does sort of make sense from a travel perspective. But I still think, because we saw when we first went out just a really considerable supply of both on-street and off-street resources, so we just went with a very maximal sort of look at this to give a very conservative look, and consider that basically everybody drives and have a fairly conservative occupancy rate. And I think at the end of the day, in terms of response to both the community board and the Board of Standards and Appeals, that we kind of model out as actual or real potential scenario with the moved location. So I think I don't think we did ourselves any favors in being ultra conservative, particularly given the community board's concern about utilizing on-street parking spaces. So
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? No? Okay. Anybody, any consultants want to still speak? Otherwise, we're going to go to see if there's anyone in the public who would like to speak about this.
I just think because this is one comment that I think can be easily addressed here. Kevin, during the review session, Commissioner Shabeta had wanted more explanation about why an independent noise analysis was not necessary here. If you could speak a little more to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a thoughtful consideration, and it's something, when we looked at and we scoped this out for the pastor, we had to be mindful of trying to be as cost effective as possible. Now, that doesn't mean we don't follow the secret technical manual. We did a project at Eltingville, the closest train station, down on Richmond and Amboy Road, about 6 to 8 months prior to this, that was approved by EARD. And we did readings all around that. At that point, at that location, which we took a reading about 30 feet from the elevated track. That's an elevated exposed rail location at Eltingville. And the point at which we're here now is a 30-foot or about 24-foot deep trench. And the proposed church location is approximately 142 feet from center of rail line. And so we felt, and I believe this is submitted to DEP because they asked the same question, we felt that the reading at the Eltingville station was a worst case condition, as noise is generally propagated downward, even from a berm location, and it was totally exposed with no tree canopy, no, totally encompassing open cut, which is what we have here. So that's why we wanted to use this other reading and avoid costly additional noise readings, since we had one that represented a worst case condition and did not result in an exceedance of the secret thresholds.
Okay, but DEP is looking at your submission, correct?
They've reviewed it. Yeah, we submitted it many months ago per their question. They wanted to know how that location is different, and I supplied photographic evidence. I supplied takeoff evidence in terms of where the monitoring location was at, and we had no other response. I'm not sure if staff got the response back from them that they concur with our findings yet. It's been 6 months probably since we submitted that.
I'm gonna unmute Ms. Banky. Maybe she can unmute herself. I can't. Have you heard from them?
I'm not aware that they've reviewed this before the past few weeks, so
It was.
I'm not sure.
Sorry, Tracy. We can talk about it afterwards. I have a letter from DEP going back about 6 months ago on this, and we edited the previous submission and resubmitted. I just don't know if it got to them, so we can certainly follow up before we have our next hearing.
They do have the most recent submission, but yeah, let's follow up. Thanks.
Oh, I did want to note to all, my apologies, because I was looking at the EA today and there's a bunch of inappropriate PDF page breaks. So Tracy, I am going to submit, if you don't mind, a new quality looking report when we make some edits or supply a cover letter with responses to comments, I would prefer to have a perfect looking document go into the board.
We always prefer perfect documents, but unfortunately, we often don't get documents.
I hear you, Chair. we try. I was a little embarrassed. I saw several headers pop to the next page, and we try not to have that happen. So anyway, I'll work with Tracy on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. I don't think, do we have any other comments from anybody? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to see whether there's anyone in the public watching who wants to speak on this.
So it's 2019-265BZ 60371A. This is 35 Giffords Lane. Staten Island.
So if you would like to speak on this, please, we invite you to call in. The phone number is 646-558-8656. And then when you get the prompt, you dial 950-9335-5083 and the pound sign. And we will give you about 30 seconds to see if there's someone who's dialing in, because we know there's a time delay. Nobody? Okay, one more. I'm just going to do one more call because since this was something that was of interest both to neighbors and the community board, where this is item number 2019-265BZ and 603-71A, 35 Giffords Lane in Staten Island. This is the Faith Community, the House of Worship Faith Community Church. If you would like to speak on this as a member of the public, please dial 646-558-8656 and the passcode 950-9335-5083 pound sign.
Starting the timer.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Tell me when 30 seconds is up.
You'll hear it probably.
Sorry, we know we have like a 30-second time delay on this, so.
15
at least-
seconds, 14, 13.
Okay, you don't have to count it out.
No, I'm looking at myself, sorry.
Okay,
Wait,
all right then. So we will then schedule this offline for a continued hearing. You have a lot of work to do. So you have any questions before we move on?
We understand how to move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. So I appreciate everyone in the team participating on Zoom, and congratulations on your maiden voyages to Zoom if they are. Okay, thank you.
Okay, this concludes the public hearing for May 5th, 2020, the 2 p.m. session.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Here.